Can I find the most legendary Reddit story ever told? Reddit is full of stories that feel too unbelievable to be true. Some make you laugh so hard you can't breathe. Some leave you staring at your screen long after you've finished reading. And every once in a while, you find one that completely pulls you into another world. For years, people have argued over one question. What's the greatest Reddit story ever posted? I decided to find out for myself. My name is Alex. And this is the journey that led me to a story I'll never forget. It started as a simple challenge. One Friday night I was scrolling through Reddit, jumping from one subreddit to another. Hours disappeared. I found unbelievable survival stories. Family betrayals. People exposing scammers. Military homecomings that made thousands cry. Stories about strangers changing someone's life with one simple act of kindness. Every time I thought I'd found the greatest story, someone in the comments would say, "No. You need to read this one instead." It became an obsession. For nearly 2 weeks I searched through hundreds of posts. Some had millions of views. Others had barely been noticed. I realized something interesting. The stories people remembered most weren't always the biggest. They were the ones that made readers feel like they were living every second alongside the person telling it. Eventually one post kept appearing everywhere. Different subreddits. Different comment sections. Different recommendation lists. Everyone simply referred to it as the cabin story. No spoilers. Just the cabin story. Curiosity won. I clicked. The post began with one sentence. I thought I was taking a peaceful weekend hike. Nothing dramatic. Nothing flashy. Just enough to make me keep reading. The writer introduced himself as Ethan, a software engineer who spent most of his life behind computer screens. After months of working overtime, he decided to disappear into the mountains for a weekend. No phone calls. No emails. No deadlines. Just nature. The first day went exactly as planned. Beautiful weather. Quiet trails. Fresh mountain air. Then everything changed. Dark clouds rolled in much faster than expected. Within minutes heavy rain became a violent storm. The trail disappeared beneath mud. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Ethan realized he was completely lost. With daylight fading, he spotted an old cabin hidden among the trees. It looked abandoned. The windows were dirty. The porch sagged. One shutter hung loose, banging against the wall every time the wind blew. It wasn't somewhere you'd choose to spend the night. But it beat freezing outside. Inside, the cabin was dusty. Old furniture. A fireplace. Shelves filled with books falling apart from age. There was no electricity. No running water. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes every tiny sound seem much louder. After starting a small fire, Ethan searched the cabin for blankets. Instead, he discovered an old leather journal tucked inside a loose floorboard. The first few pages were ordinary. Weather notes. Hunting trips. Repairs around the cabin. Then the writing changed. The entries became darker. The unknown writer described hearing footsteps outside every night. Knocking at the door. Whispers through the trees. At first Ethan assumed it was fictional. Someone passing time by writing ghost stories. But then he noticed something unsettling. The dates. They were real. Nearly 40 years old. The writer repeatedly mentioned a nearby mining town that had been abandoned decades earlier. Curious, Ethan searched the cabin more carefully. Behind an old bookshelf he found faded newspaper clippings. One headline immediately caught his attention. Local hiker missing. The article described a man who vanished after exploring the same mountains. The date matched one of the journal entries exactly. Suddenly the notebook didn't feel like fiction anymore. It felt like evidence. That night Ethan barely slept. Every creak of the cabin sounded deliberate. Branches scraped across the roof. Wind rattled the windows. Around 2 in the morning, he heard footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Crunching across wet leaves outside. Then 3 knocks. Not loud. Not frantic. Just knock. 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 He held his breath. Nothing happened. 5 minutes passed. Then another 3 knocks. This time, on the back wall. Ethan never opened the door. When sunrise finally arrived, he packed everything as quickly as possible. Before leaving, he took photographs of every journal page, every newspaper clipping, every strange detail inside the cabin. Back home he couldn't stop thinking about it. Instead of moving on, he started researching. County records, old maps, historical archives. Everything pointed toward one forgotten tragedy. 43 years earlier, a small illegal mining operation had collapsed beneath the mountain. Several workers disappeared. The company responsible quietly abandoned the site. According to public records, only 2 bodies were ever recovered. The journal's author had apparently spent years trying to convince authorities that others were still trapped beneath the abandoned tunnels. Nobody believed him. He eventually disappeared too. Most people assumed he'd simply wandered into the wilderness and never returned. Ethan wasn't satisfied. He contacted a local historian, then a retired sheriff. Finally, an elderly woman who had grown up near the mountains. She recognized the cabin immediately. Her father had known the journal's owner personally. According to her, he'd spent decades searching for proof that the mining company had covered up the accident. Everyone dismissed him as obsessed. After hearing Ethan's story, local officials reopened old records that hadn't been touched in decades. Ground-penetrating surveys were conducted near the abandoned mining area. What they discovered shocked everyone. Hidden tunnels, collapsed equipment, human remains exactly where the journal's author had claimed they would be. After more than 40 years, families finally received answers about relatives they'd never stopped searching for. The mysterious journal wasn't a ghost story. It was one man's desperate attempt to leave the truth behind in case someone eventually listened. Reading that ending gave me chills. Not because it was supernatural. Because it was painfully human. One ordinary person refused to let forgotten lives disappear. Even after nobody believed him. That story stayed with me for weeks. Not because of the mystery. Not because of the suspense. Because it reminded me why Reddit has become home to so many unforgettable stories. Sometimes the internet isn't just memes and arguments. Sometimes it's where forgotten voices finally get heard. Where complete strangers preserve history. Where one person's experience can inspire millions they've never met. So, did I find the greatest Reddit story ever written? Maybe. Or maybe the greatest one hasn't been posted yet. Maybe it's sitting in someone's draft folder right now, waiting for the courage to hit post. That's the magic of Reddit. Every username belongs to someone with a story. Some are funny. Some are heartbreaking. Some change the way you look at the world. And every once in a while, one reminds you that truth can be stranger than fiction. So now I want to ask you, what's the most unforgettable Reddit story you've ever read? Share it in the comments below. Maybe the next legendary story is one all of us have been missing.